My son locked me in a nursing home and said, "You should be grateful we're not leaving you." But as that door clicked shut behind him, I found something he never expected. A forgotten ticket in my old coat pocket. By morning, I was $18 million in the lottery in an expensive restaurant, polished silverware, muted jazz, and the faint scent of truffle oil. It all felt staged, like a set built for a performance I hadn't agreed to join. Across from me sat my son Jasper and his wife Meline, smiling as though they were about to deliver good news, but I'd raised Jasper. I knew the difference between sincerity and rehearsal. He cleared his throat and leaned forward. His voice wrapped in false warmth. "Mom, we wanted to check in. You've been doing so much on your own lately. Maybe it's time you let us help." Meline nodded quickly. "We just worry about you. Cheryl, you've been through a lot since David passed. The apartment, the bills. It's a lot for one person." "I'm fine," I said, stirring my coffee. "I've managed worse." Jasper gave a sympathetic sigh that didn't reach his eyes. "It's not about capability, Mom. It's about peace of mind. You deserve to relax there." It was peace of mind. The phrase people used when they were about to take something away from you. Meline leaned forward. Her tone, soft, but practiced. "We actually found this wonderful place. Maple Creek Meadows. It's one of those high-end retirement communities. Beautiful, safe, everything taken care of. Just a tour. No commitment." I smiled faintly. "A tour," I repeated. Jasper reached for my hand. "You'll love it. Think of it as a change of scenery. No pressure at all." I wanted to refuse, but I was tired. Tired of fighting small battles dressed as polite conversations. "All right," I said finally. "A tour." The drive to Maple Creek was quiet. I watched the familiar skyline fade into the distance, feeling the slow ache of something slipping away. Jasper talked about property values and Meline filled the silence with chatter about family stability. I kept my eyes on the window, the city blurring into suburbs. Then into clean, sterile streets lined with manicured trees. Maple Creek Meadows gleamed like a model home. White stone walls, perfect lawns, the faint scent of antiseptic and artificial lavender. A woman at the front desk greeted us with a smile so bright. "Welcome. You must be Mrs. Graham." Jasper took charge immediately. "We're just here for a tour." "Of course," she said, handing me a clipboard of forms. "Just standard check-in paperwork." Before I could respond, Meline gently slid it from my hands. "We'll handle this for you, Mom. You just relax." Relax. The word had become a command. The next few minutes blurred together. Jasper took my keys with a light chuckle. "So you don't lose them, Mom." Meline took my purse. "We'll keep this safe for you." They led me down a hallway lined with watercolor paintings and soft piano music. "Just while we get the paperwork sorted," Jasper said, opening the door to a small, spotless room, a single bed, a dresser, a window overlooking a parking lot. "This will be your room for the night," Meline said brightly. I blinked. "For the night?" "Just temporary," Jasper assured me. "We'll be back soon. You'll see it's a great place." I reached for my purse out of habit and froze when I remembered it wasn't there. "Jasper," I said quietly. "I don't want to stay here." He smiled too quickly. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. You should be grateful we didn't abandon you." The words landed with a cold, heavy finality. Before I could respond, they each kissed my cheek, mechanical, distant, and walked out. The door closed with a click that echoed louder than it should have. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the sterile white walls, the faint hum of the air conditioner. Everything about the place was clean, efficient, and lifeless. The clipboard still sat on the dresser, half filled with my name. Resident Cheryl Graham. I whispered it once under my breath. The sound of it small and strange in the empty room. This wasn't a tour. It was an intake, and the people I loved most had just locked me away. The first week at Maple Creek passed in a gray blur of schedules and silence. Everything ran on a clock: breakfast at 7 o'clock, medication at 9 o'clock, lunch at noon. The nurses called everyone sweetheart, but their eyes were always on the clipboard. Not the person. My life had become a list of boxes waiting to be checked. Ate lunch, took pills, slept through the night. I wasn't living anymore. I was being managed. Days blurred together in the bland food. The endless hum of fluorescent lights and the steady rhythm of footsteps in the hall. I counted seconds just to feel time move. After 40 years among living stories and books, mine now sat closed, gathering dust in a place that smelled of bleach and silence. On the fourth day, Meline arrived. She didn't call first. She swept into my room wearing a blazer, the color of champagne, and an expression of strained sympathy. In her hands was a cardboard box. "I brought you a few essentials," she said brightly. "I had to clear out some things to make space for the renovations." "Renovations?" I repeated. "Oh, don't worry," she said quickly, waving it off. "Just freshening things up. You'll see it when it's ready." I smiled thinly. "I'm sure I will." She placed the box on the dresser and looked around as if inspecting a guest room she didn't particularly like. "They're treating you well here, aren't they?" "Jasper said the staff is wonderful. They're very efficient," I said. "Good," she replied. Too quickly then, as if she'd fulfilled her duty, she added, "Well, we have a lot going on, but we'll visit again soon." When she left, the room felt lighter. I opened the box: some sweaters, a photo of David, and my old navy blue coat. Its faint scent of lemon polish hit me like memory itself. I slipped it on, not for warmth, but for the small comfort of feeling like myself again. I slipped my hands into the coat pockets and felt something dry. A folded piece of paper. A memory surfaced: a Tuesday at the grocery store. The cashier joking about the jackpot. I'd bought a ticket on a whim. The day before, everything changed. Its faded numbers looked meaningless. Yet, I couldn't let it go. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dim light of the hallway bulb filtering under my door, thinking about the ticket. I didn't believe in luck, but something about finding it now here felt like a sign. The next afternoon, I walked to the tiny library tucked behind the recreation room. In the corner sat a single computer, old enough to belong in a museum. My hands trembled slightly as I sat down and typed in the date of the drawing printed on the ticket. The internet loaded slowly, line by line, as if testing my patience. Then the numbers appeared. I read them once, twice. My breath caught. Every number matched. All 6. I sat there frozen as the meaning sank in the jackpot. $18 million. I didn't laugh or cry. I just stared at the screen while a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't joy I felt, but clarity. This wasn't luck. It was leverage. A way out of the cage they'd built for me for days after discovering the ticket. I carried it close, folded neatly inside the back of my notebook where no one ever looked. The fear of losing it lived beneath my ribs like a second heartbeat. But with that fear came something else. Focus. The shock had faded. Leaving behind a sharper mind, I began watching, listening, noticing everything. The routines of Maple Creek had become my study material: who carried keys, when phones were left unattended, what time the nurses changed shifts. I was a librarian again, cataloging the world for a plan that was slowly taking shape. One morning, I found a stack of old newspapers in the common room. Most residents used them to cut coupons or line drawers, but I read every word. Near the bottom of one page, a small ad caught my attention. Coleman and Associates, Elder Law and Asset Protection, Confidential Consultations. I read it twice, my pulse quickening. Whoever they were, they specialized in people like me, people who'd been taken advantage of under polite pretenses. That afternoon, I staged my first act of rebellion. I waited until after breakfast, then pressed a hand to my temple and murmured, "I feel a little lightheaded." Within minutes, a nurse led me to the station, fussing over my blood pressure. When she stepped away to fetch water, I seized my chance. The phone sat inches from my hand. I lifted the receiver, dialed the number from memory, and prayed. After 3 rings, a calm voice answered, "Coleman Associates." "This is Grace." "Grace Coleman," I whispered. "Yes." "Who's calling?" "My name is Cheryl Graham," I said softly. "I'm at Maple Creek Meadows. My son used a power of attorney to take control of my life, and I think I know how to get it back." Her tone sharpened instantly. "Can you speak freely?" "No," I said, "but I can listen." She didn't ask unnecessary questions. "I'll come to you. It'll look like a volunteer visit 3 days from now, late afternoon. Be ready." I hung up just as the nurse returned, smiling weakly as she handed me a cup of water. "Feeling better much," I said. And I was. When Grace arrived, she looked exactly as I'd imagined, sharp but unassuming. She wore a simple cardigan and carried a Bible, blending perfectly with the church volunteers who came every week. She found me in the Serenity Garden, a square of manicured grass and artificial flowers that smelled faintly of disinfectant. "You must be Mrs. Graham," she said, sitting beside me. "You have about 20 minutes before someone checks." I nodded. "That's enough." I told her everything. How Jasper and Meline had tricked me. How they'd taken my phone and keys, and how I'd found the ticket. I spoke quietly, carefully. The way one handles fragile things. When I handed her the folded paper, she unfolded it with professional care. Her eyes widened slightly. "You realize this could change everything." "I do," I said. "But I can't let them find out." Grace's expression hardened. Not pity, but resolve. "Then we protect it. First, we'll create a blind trust. The winnings will be claimed under a separate name. Completely off record. They'll never trace it to you. Second, we gather proof your son is abusing his authority, emails, calls, anything. Once we have evidence, we'll petition to revoke the power of attorney." I stared at her, barely breathing. "You really think it's possible?" Grace smiled faintly. "Possible. It's already happening." She reached out her hand. I took it. The gesture firm and real. "We're going to get your life back, Mrs. Graham," she said. "But for now, keep pretending. Let them think you're still trapped." As she walked away, I slipped my hands into my coat pockets and felt the faint outline of where the ticket had once been. For the first time in weeks, my fear eased. I wasn't powerless anymore. In the days after Grace's visit, I learned how to disappear in plain sight. I became exactly what everyone at Maple Creek expected: quiet, compliant, forgettable. I smiled when spoken to, nodded during bingo, and thanked the nurses for tasteless food. It was remarkable how easily people stopped seeing you once you gave them the version of you they preferred. That invisibility was my armor, while Grace worked on the outside, turning the lottery ticket into something untouchable. Days moved slowly, each one blending into the next. The staff's footsteps echoed down the hall at predictable hours. The clock above the nurse's station ticked like a metronome. I studied everything: who lingered near the phones, which doors were left unlocked. I was no longer surviving. I was waiting. On a Thursday morning, I decided to make my move. I called Jasper. My voice was light, almost cheerful. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "I was going through the old things you brought over. It's funny, the things you think are worthless often turn out to be the most valuable." A pause. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing," I said. "Just some old papers, memories." He hesitated. You're not worrying about money, are you? Not at all, I said, smiling. I have everything I need. I hung up before he could ask more. I imagined the confusion that would spread across their perfect kitchen when he told Meline. Let them stew in it. Grace had told me to plant the seed. Now I just had to let it grow. 2 days later, Grace called from the prepaid phone she'd hidden inside a hollow Bible. It's done, she said. The trust is active. The winnings are secured under a blind name. No one can trace it. And Jasper? I asked. He'll show his hand soon. We're giving him bait he can't resist. The bait arrived that afternoon. An unsolicited all-cash offer for my apartment. Grace's firm, operating through a shell company called Lakeshore Legacy Properties, had made the proposal 30% above market value. Quick, close, no contingencies. It was perfect because it was absurd. Only greed would make it believable. That evening, the phone rang again. Jasper's voice came first, trembling with excitement. Mom, you won't believe this. Someone's offering a fortune for the apartment. It's the perfect time to sell. I let my silence stretch just long enough for discomfort to bloom. Why are you telling me? I asked. I thought you were handling everything. Well, technically, yes, he said quickly. But it's still your property. We just need your signature. It'll make your life easier. Madeline's voice cut in. Sharp and bright. This is a blessing. Cheryl, you're in good hands. Don't make things complicated. I glanced down at the tiny recording device Grace had given me, hidden beneath the blanket on my lap. Its light blinked faintly. You sound very eager, I said softly. Meline laughed. Brittle. We're trying to help you. For God's sake, help me. I repeated. That's one word for it. Jasper sighed. The mask slipping. Mom, stop being difficult. You can't live there anymore. Let us handle this. I smiled into the receiver. Of course, dear. Do whatever you think is best. When the call ended, I pressed stop on the recorder and exhaled slowly. Their voices greedy, impatient. Unguarded were safely stored. Grace had been right. Greed was the easiest truth to capture. The trap was set and they had walked straight into it. I sensed they were coming before they even arrived. The air in Maple Creek always seemed to tense before trouble. By mid-morning, I saw their SUV pull up outside black, gleaming. Too self-assured for a visit of concern. Jasper stepped out first, clutching a folder thick with papers. Meline followed in a cream coat and heels that clicked like accusations. They looked like a team arriving to close a deal. Not a family coming to see their mother. When they entered my room, I stayed seated by the window. Jasper smiled. That careful professional smile. Mom, we just wanted to talk face to face. It's easier this way. Meline set her bag down and crossed her arms. You've been hard to reach lately, she said. Her tone rehearsed. We brought something that will really simplify things for you. I nodded toward the folder. I assume that's what this is about. Jasper laughed lightly. You always were perceptive. It's about the apartment. Mom, we've had this amazing offer above market value. Cash quick close. It would give you so much peace of mind. Peace of mind? I repeated softly. For whom? For all of us, he said quickly. You don't need the stress of upkeep or bills. You're safe here. Cared for. Selling the place is the sensible choice. Meline jumped in. Her voice smooth and bright. You'll never have to worry again. It's what any responsible person would do. I watched them perform. Every word perfectly choreographed. They weren't speaking to me. They were presenting as if I were an obstacle in a business negotiation. My silence seemed to unnerve them. Finally, Jasper slid the folder across the table. Everything's ready. We just need your signature. It's standard paperwork. I studied the folder but didn't touch it. You already spoke to real estate agents. Didn't you, Jasper? Froze. What? Behind my back? I said calmly. You've been negotiating the sale as if I were gone. His face hardened. Mom, don't start with this. You can't handle this kind of responsibility anymore. I looked up at him slowly. Responsibility. I echoed. That's an interesting word for theft. Meline's smile faltered. That's not fair. We've done everything for you. Paying bills, arranging care, managing your life. You should be grateful. Grateful, I repeated, for being locked away while you sell the home I built. Jasper's patience snapped. You're overreacting. You're not thinking clearly. This is why I took the power of attorney to protect you from making bad decisions. Like trusting you, I asked quietly. He flushed, his jaw tight. You don't understand what's best for you anymore. Something inside me steadied. I stood slow but certain. The light from the window catching the gray in my hair. You're right, I said. I finally understand. I've mistaken your greed for concern. Meline tried again, her voice pleading now. Cheryl. Please, let's not make this ugly. We just want what's best for yourselves. I interrupted. Her eyes flashed. You can't do this. You'll lose everything. I smiled faintly. No, dear. I already lost everything. Now I'm taking it back. Jasper stepped forward, frustration breaking through his practiced calm. You can't just refuse. You don't have the authority. I can, I said, my voice cutting clean through his. And I will. Your performance is over. The words landed between us like a verdict. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jasper gathered the folder, his hands shaking. Fine, we'll see what the court says. Meline's glare lingered a second longer before she turned sharply and followed him out. The door closed with a heavy final sound. I stood still, breathing slowly, letting the silence fill the room they'd polluted with their lies. Outside, sunlight stretched across the floor like a spotlight. I didn't need applause to know what I'd done. The act was finished, and for the first time I was the one who wrote the ending. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Plain walls, scuffed benches, and the faint smell of coffee and old paper. It wasn't a place for spectacle. It was a place for truth. Stripped of decoration, I sat beside Grace, my hands folded, my heartbeat steady, but heavy. Across the aisle, Jasper looked smaller than I remembered. His confidence deflated into nervous energy. His suit was neat, but his collar was tight. Meline was nowhere to be seen. The clerk called the case, her voice echoing in the quiet room in the matter of Cheryl Graham. Petition for revocation of power of attorney. The words felt unreal. My own name spoken like a headline in a life that had almost been rewritten without me. Grace rose with her calm, deliberate grace. Your Honor, she began. This case is not about incapacity. It's about control. Mrs. Graham's power of attorney was signed when she was grieving, and it was later abused to strip her of autonomy. Today, we ask the court to return what should never have been taken, her right to make her own decisions. The judge, a middle-aged woman with clear, intelligent eyes, nodded. Proceed. Grace moved like a metronome of precision. First, she said, the psychological evaluation. She handed a sealed report to the clerk conducted by Dr. Evelyn Ross. It concludes that Mrs. Graham is fully competent to manage her affairs. The judge skimmed the report and gave a brief nod. Accepted. I saw Jasper shift, his foot tapping under the table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Next, Grace placed a stack of printed emails before the judge. Exhibit B. These are correspondences between Mr. Graham and multiple real estate agents obtained through subpoena. In them, he refers to himself as the decision-maker for his mother's property and discusses expedited sales terms without her knowledge. The judge's eyes lifted. Mr. Graham, is this accurate? Jasper hesitated, then cleared his throat. I was just trying to do what was best for her. She wasn't thinking clearly. Grace's tone was even but sharp. Did any physician declare her legally incompetent? No, he admitted quietly. Grace turned back to the judge. And finally, Your Honor, Exhibit C. A recorded phone conversation between Mrs. Graham and her son in which he pressures her to sell her home against her will. She pressed play. The sound filled the room. Jasper's voice bright with false warmth. Mom, you don't need the apartment anymore. We're taking care of you here. Then Meline's voice, shrill and certain. It's for your own good, Cheryl. Why hold on to it? When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Jasper's hands clenched, his face pale. I watched him not with anger but with a kind of quiet mourning. The judge folded her hands. Mrs. Graham, she said gently. Would you like to speak before I make my ruling? I stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. My voice sounded steady. Older but stronger than I expected. I was never incapable. I was grieving. There's a difference. My son mistook my silence for weakness and my trust for surrender. I never lost my capacity. I was merely denied my right to exercise it. Grace's lips curved into the faintest smile. The judge nodded once, then set her pen down. This court finds that Mrs. Graham is of sound mind and that her power of attorney was misused. Effective immediately, the power of attorney granted to Mr. Graham is revoked. The gavel came down, a single solid sound that reverberated through my chest like a heartbeat returning. When we stepped outside, the air was cool and bright. Grace gathered her files, her tone soft but firm. You did beautifully. I thanked her, but before I could say more, I heard a voice behind me. Mom. Jasper stood on the courthouse steps, his eyes red, his expression raw. I didn't mean for this to happen. I was just trying to protect you. I turned to face him fully. You tried to control me. I said evenly. You tried to write the final chapter of my life. But now I'll write it myself. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I left him standing there, the wind tugging at his sleeves, the gavel's echo still ringing in my mind. For the first time in years, my story was truly my own. The day I left Maple Creek Meadows. No one noticed. There were no staff members lined up at the door. No polite goodbyes or forced smiles. Grace had arranged a quiet exit, a private car waiting by the side entrance, its engine idling softly in the cold morning air. I wore my navy blue coat, the same one that had once held my freedom in its pocket. As I stepped outside, I didn't look back. The automatic doors slid closed behind me with a hiss. Like the end of a long, cruel chapter. The drive through Chicago was silent, except for the faint hum of the tires against the asphalt. The city looked different than I remembered, but perhaps it was me who had changed. The gray skyline was no longer a distant view, framed by Maple Creek's narrow windows. It was mine again. When the car pulled up in front of my building, I sat for a moment, staring up at the 21 floors of brick and glass that had once been my world. The doorman, an older man who had been here for years, blinked in surprise when he saw me. Mrs. Graham, he said, his voice hesitant. I smiled. Yes, Walter. It's good to be home. He opened the door for me without another word, though I saw the understanding flicker in his eyes. People knew, even when they didn't ask. When the elevator doors opened onto the 21st floor, I stood in the hallway, holding the new set of keys Grace had given me. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the gravity of the moment. I unlocked the door myself, one turn at a time until the latch clicked, and the familiar scent washed over me. Old books, lemon polish, home. Afternoon light poured through the living room windows, spilling across the floor in golden ribbons. The dust motes floated like tiny galaxies, moving in rhythm with the faint hum of the city outside. I walked through each room slowly, touching the spines of books on the corner of the worn sofa, the frame of the photograph of David on our wedding day. His eyes still held that quiet mischief I'd fallen in love with 50 years ago. I made it back. "David," I whispered. "You were right. Some things are worth fighting for." That night, I didn't sleep much. I walked from room to room, listening to the old pipes creak and the city breathe beyond the windows. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. I felt alive. The weeks that followed were quiet, deliberate. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it stretch and settle. The way one lets bread rise patiently. Naturally, Grace handled the practical matters. But I handled my soul. I traveled to Italy that spring alone. It was a trip David and I had planned once, but never taken. I stood beneath the fresco of Florence, the sunlight touching the Arno River, and I thought of him, not with grief, but gratitude. When I returned, I made an anonymous donation to the Chicago Public Library system. Enough to fund the restoration of their oldest reading room. I asked for nothing in return, not even a plaque. And I set up a college trust fund for my grandchildren, managed by an independent trustee. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the next generation to have choices I had once been denied. By the time summer came, my life had found a new rhythm. I still woke early, brewed tea in the same chipped kettle, and opened the curtains wide to let the city in. My world was smaller now, but it was entirely mine. One evening, as the sun began to dip behind the skyline, I settled into my favorite armchair, the old one with the threadbare arms that David used to tease me about. A cup of tea steamed beside me, and the soft hum of the city rose from below. I opened a book but didn't read right away. My gaze drifted to the window to the glittering expanse of Chicago at dusk. The lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny promises. I thought of the Tuesday when it had all begun, the whim of a ticket bought with spare change and no expectation. The world had called it luck. But sitting there in my own home, surrounded by quiet and peace, I knew better. The Tuesday ticket had never been the prize. It had simply been the key. I still can't believe I lived through all of that. The betrayal, the silence, and the slow climb back to freedom. Looking back, I realize it wasn't luck that saved me. It was courage, patience, and the refusal to give up on myself. If my story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories like mine, and tell me in the comments, what does freedom mean to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts.